This is your wake-up call.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
So, as the former Deputy Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Harper, based upon everything that we have seen over the past few months, that is truly astounding, can you comment on how the government has handled it and how Prime Minister Harper, based on your experience working with him, would have handled this type of interference?
Well, I believe that Prime Minister Harper had he been given these allegations, they would have been made. They would have been public, and they would have been acted upon. If you've seen how Prime Minister Harper handled things, for example, sending the Iranian delegation home, shutting down the embassy in 2012. That's how Prime Minister Harper handled things when he was briefed by CSIS. As the former Deputy Chief of Staff and National Campaign Director, both in the 2011 campaign and the 2015 campaign, I was never at one point briefed on any foreign interference leading into both of those elections.
Well, and I think you made an important point about Iran, because we were seeing back 10 plus years ago the Iranian regime targeting Iranian Canadians and interfering in our domestic affairs, and they were using accredited diplomats to orchestrate that interference. Prime Minister Harper shut down the entire embassy. He sent all of them home, back to Tehran. And we have, by contrast, a Liberal government that has turned a blind eye to Iran's interference, notwithstanding that they shot down, the IRGC shot down PS 752, and these Liberals, despite a vote of this House of Commons in 2018 to designate the IRGC as a terrorist entity, the Liberals haven't seen fit to do that. As a result, the IRGC is able to recruit, raise funds, and intimidate Iranian Canadians. Maybe you would wish to elaborate.
You're 100% right, and I'm very cognizant of the work that the Conservative caucus led by Melissa Lantsman has done in terms of bringing awareness and pushing for the Liberal government to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity, which would be the right and proper thing to do. And frankly, in light of what we have seen over the last 3 or 4 months in terms of dragging the feet in terms of an investigation into China, it's also very perplexing to me as to why they don't. It's a very simple thing to list the IRGC as a terrorist organization, and it's shocking that they have not done so up until this point.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I guess you should ask them.
Yeah, very good. What advice would you have given the Prime Minister if CSIS briefed you with warnings that a candidate running for the Conservative Party was part of a foreign interference network?
My recommendation, if I had been briefed on that, would be that the person no longer be a candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. And
by contrast, we know that this Prime Minister was briefed about a candidate who was part of a foreign interference network, and the Prime Minister turned a blind eye to that and allowed that candidate to run, and that candidate was later elected as a member of Parliament. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's an abdication of responsibility in terms of protecting the electoral integrity of the election to be briefed on something and not act on it.
Well, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I think this further underscores a Prime Minister who doesn't take foreign interference seriously, whether that interference comes from Beijing or Tehran or other hostile foreign states.
100%, yes.
Just to confirm, you were the campaign manager for Mr. Poilievre's leadership?
I was a senior advisor.
Senior advisor. Are you going to be the national campaign manager? Has that been announced?
Is there an election coming up soon?
Probably. You referenced non-state actors, which I think is an important point, and a point that hasn't been raised, of course, is the tens of millions of dollars that flowed into the country during the convoy. We know that if you were a senior advisor to Mr. Poilievre during that time, and we recognize Mr. Poilievre's relationship with the convoy, You referenced Ms. Lanceman. We know that Ms. Lanceman was the first MP to provide a petition calling for the end of vaccine mandates in the lead-up. What was your advice to Mr. Poilievre to ensure that there was a firewall between the insurrectionist actions of the convoy and the leadership campaign at the time?
In terms of the convoy, I believe that Liberal Justice Rouleau stated that there was actually no evidence that foreign money or foreign interference was actually part of, that he found any evidence that was part of what happened in terms of the Freedom Convoy. You were on the committee, so you would probably have...
And go send me, but about $1 million coming from the United States.
I'm just sorry, I paused the time for a second. Yep. Mr. Fergus?
I'd like to apologize to my colleague to put a point of order. It's just that there was a statement regarding a member of Justice Rouleau, and I think there was an adjective added to that by the witness, and I'm just trying to figure out, is that a title? Because clearly that's not the case as far as I know. That anybody who's a member of the judiciary is appointed on or has memberships in political parties.
I'm going to return the floor to Mr. Green.
Let's try to keep points of order to actual standing orders so that we can continue with this. My question was against advising in a time when $10 million is going to Tamara Lich. She's from the Maverick Party. There's close connections between senior conservative MPs and the movements. You have the leader in the leadership, or you have Mr. Poilievre in a leadership race, which you're a senior advisor for. I mean, it's a fact that $1 million came in. We know that to be true. And so I'm just wondering, what advice would you have given Mr. Poilievre, given the close relationship to the Conservative Party and the convoy, to ensure that foreign interference did not occur?
Well, if you're talking about donations, over 62,000 people donated $9.7 million to our leadership campaign.
Specifically, to what advice would you be providing in this moment to the leader in the leadership race to ensure that there was no... Did you take any precautions? Let me just put it that way. If the answer is no, you can say no and we can...
Well, what were the precautions? Like, I guess the only thing you could be talking about would be fundraising. So that's what I was trying to address. So,
I mean, it could also be memberships. I mean, presumably, with the numbers that have been reported, there had been lots of allegations during the last leadership race about inflated numbers, fake numbers. We've heard testimony from expert witnesses that nomination races are a prime place for foreign interference.
Well, it might be in other parties. I know that the Liberal Party of Canada has a free membership. I'm not sure what your party has. Ours is a $15 membership, 1-year membership, and people must pay by their own credit card or they must pay by a personal check.
So there was no advice given at that time from you as a senior leader to Mr. Poilievre regarding the relationship between...
Well, there's very clear Elections Canada rules regarding leadership, and there are very clear party rules regarding leadership. So in terms of the donations, as I said, over 62,000 people donated, close to 9.7...
Of course, that foreign interference can happen outside of elections. Can we find that common ground?
Well, we've seen it based on the reports we've seen from the Liberal Party in terms of nominations across the board.
I think there was also some allegations on the Conservative side as well, provincially as well. Mr. Brown, Mr. Ford, Mr. Charest, lots of that stuff seems to float around during leadership time. So I guess during your time, you had mentioned that you had never been briefed on matters from CSIS as a senior advisor in the Harper government. Was it something you ever considered, though, even if you weren't briefed? Was there ever a time when this topic came up and you felt it necessary, either in a partisan role as a national campaign director or operative, or in a PMO role?
No, I never said I wasn't briefed by CSIS. I said I was never briefed by CSIS on foreign interference or any matter.
Yeah, that was what I asked.
Regarding that. No, it never came to mind because there was never any thought that I had that there were foreign actors that were participating in into the election process, except for the press reports leading up to the 2015.
I find that, I'm new to the Hill, been around less time than you, but I find that odd. I find that highly suspicious that somebody with that kind of security clearance would never consider foreign interference, given that you would be briefing, given that we have 2 committees on it, and we have, what I would consider to be high-level security clearance. At no time did a topic ever come up, given the height in which the role in which you played in these governments?
Leading into the first time I had considered that foreign interference could be a problem was what I said in terms of Tides Foundation funding Lead Now, which was
all your time. It was just, I find that, quite frankly, and I'm saying this not to be personal, and I'll say this to the chair, I find it highly suspicious. Either you knew, and I'll use the framework of my friend Mr. Cooper, either you knew and did nothing, or you didn't know and you're incompetent. And I'm not saying you're incompetent because I consider you to be a highly intelligent person. So using the words of Mr. Cooper, who I've heard use that phrase for many of my Liberal counterparts, which one is it?
Okay, well, Mr. Green, prior to, of course, Tides, funding campaigns that helped both you and your coalition partners in the 2015 election, please tell me when there was any reports of foreign interference in a Canadian election.
You've completely ignored all the testimony leading up to your arrival
Mr. Green?
here. It's a level of hubris that's normally reserved for the Liberals, but I'll leave you to it.
You mentioned in your opening comments, Ms. Byrne, that the Liberals seem to be angrier at whistleblowers and the media than they are about the actual issue at hand. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why it is. I think that this is an issue they obviously don't want to talk about it. There's a reason why they haven't called a public inquiry, which would have been a very easy thing to do. There's a reason why they dragged their feet and filibustered this committee. So Katie Telford, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, wasn't able to attend. There's the fact that they lash out at media that ask them questions and claim that CSIS is wrong, only to of course, having to backtrack. Of course, the Prime Minister said that CSIS never, the briefing note that said that MP Chong's family was targeted in Hong Kong, the original answer by the Prime Minister, and he was very hostile about it, was that it never made it out of CSIS. Well, now we find out that it's actually made it out of CSIS, and one of 3 national security advisors would have received it and not actually read the brief. So I'm not sure why I guess they are hostile because there's obviously something that they are hiding.
Question for you is Lead Now's interference in the 2015 campaign strikes officially hard at myself because we lost Regina Louvan by 132 votes that election, and the Liberals knew of this interference of over $1 million pumped into the election in 2015. Why do you think they didn't investigate that foreign election interference?
Well, maybe because it benefited them, but I think that's a question you should ask them.
Mr. Green.
Thank you. In the spirit of nonpartisanship, I'm going to attempt to find some common ground on some things I think we can agree on. You would agree that a full, independent public inquiry might be or is the best way for us to go back as far as we need to go to reassure Canadians that there is a fulsome investigation, review, and recommendations coming back to the House of Commons?
I agree.
And you'd be willing to go back as far as necessary to ensure that the testimony that we've heard would cover off in a nonpartisan way both ruling parties, both governing parties in the last 2 decades?
Yes.
And would you agree that having timely and open and full access and transparency as it relates to documents, in instances, of course, relating to national security, would help Parliament provide or the Commission provide the best framework to address the issues that have been raised?
Yes, I think so.
And in your time, and you've mentioned the decades of work that you've had, and you referenced your party, but you alluded to other parties, would you also agree that there could be revisions or alternative ways in which nomination processes happen to ensure that we're safeguarded against foreign interference as it relates to mobilization for memberships and candidates?
Well, I think, as I said, I think every party handles nominations. I think every party handles nominations differently. As I said, I don't know what the NDP is. As I said, the Liberals have a free membership system. Ours.
So you're okay with the current system as it is now?
nominee. Well, each party has a different. Each party.
That wasn't what I asked. I'm just saying.
It would. I think that Elections Canada already has a process that political parties have to follow that process. If political parties are afraid that there is foreign influence within their nominations, like what's happened with the Liberal Party, then I think they must do things.
As it relates to NSICOP and NSIRA, do you think that they're adequate bodies to deal with this, given that we had them, but yet we're still here?
Well, I think that I can't listen. The fact of the matter is that NSICOP provided a report for the Prime Minister leading into the 2019 campaign, and it was ignored. So I'm not going to comment.
Or then that there should be a mechanism when those reports should also come to the House?
Yeah, I think I'd be open to that.
And do you think that there should be legislative processes that would ensure MPs targeted for foreign interference are made aware that the interference happens in a timely way?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Byrne, if you would be indulge us, could we ask for 10 extra minutes of your time past the hour?
Sure.
Maximum. That way we can give Mr. Cooper his 5 minutes and complete this round, and then Mr. Gerritsen, and then we'll thank you for your time. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CSIS in July 2021 had a report detailing that a diplomat, Zhang Wei, at the Toronto consulate had orchestrated an intimidation campaign against sitting member of Parliament, Michael Chong. We know that that report was provided to the National Security Advisor at the PCO, as well as to the relevant departments. And we know, according to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, that the Prime Minister is routinely briefed on national security matters. According to his Chief of Staff, Ms. Telford, he reads everything and nothing is held back. And yet, in the face of that, the Prime Minister wants Canadians to believe that he learned about this in the Globe and Mail, something that couldn't be more serious when we're talking about a foreign hostile state and an accredited diplomat targeting a sitting member of Parliament to interfere in their ability to do their job on behalf of their constituents and on behalf of Canadians. Now, so in the face of that, it's very difficult to believe what the Prime Minister is saying, and even if he is being truthful, and I have real doubts about that, it speaks to his lack of seriousness with respect to foreign interference, and is an indictment either way. But we need to get to the bottom of that, and I put forward a motion today at committee to do just that. And so it is my understanding that there is an extensive tracking system within the Prime Minister's office for sensitive documents. As someone who has worked in the Prime Minister's office in senior positions, can you tell us how documents are tracked within the Prime Minister's office?
Well, with the Prime Minister's office, PCO is the traffic cop, so to speak, of documents that would go to the Prime Minister. And these tracking sheets are actually very extensive from what I remember. They not only indicate that they go to the Prime Minister, they indicate every official that they go to, so on the bureaucratic side, depending on the department. They also track, obviously, which agencies they would go to, and it also tracks what political staff they would go to. And so these would be available, and it would be very, very simple for the Prime Minister to direct PCO to make public that tracking document to find out where this mysterious briefing note and who it was delivered to, because tracking notes for what I gather are not from what I remember are not top secret or not classified documents. So this would be something very easy if the Prime Minister and the government were truly open to figuring out where this tracking note somehow got lost in the delivery. It would be very easy to find out which officials, which security agencies, and which political staff received it.